When I met the guru, it was actually before I met him physically. I saw a video of him, and just when he spoke, I knew. I just knew. This man has knowledge. It's like when you're speaking from a place, other people can feel the place you're speaking from. And I could tell that he was speaking from the depth of being. He had knowledge. He was speaking from the home of all knowledge. And I knew that immediately. First time I heard him talk, that was it. That was it. Yeah.
And you decided to go and join the ashram?
Oh, I went and saw him, and it was in Spain. I was there for 3 months with him. And then, oh no, it was before, yeah, 3 months. And at one point, how did that go? It was a really beautiful story. I told him, I had the chance to talk with him, and I told him, I said, this is my life. This is what I want in my life. But I said, now I'm in school. I had, 2-3 more years. I was a doctor. If I quit now, really nothing. I said, what should I do? And he took his hand. I can see it just as plain as I see you right now. He took his hand, he went like this, and he said, go with it for a while, then branch away. And that's what I did. Started to practice for a number of years, sold the practice, and then I went in the ashram with him.
And when you have gone to ashram, were you married or?
No. Right now I was single. Yeah. And I was in the ashram for 9 years, and I was sure it was my life. I was never going to leave. But then at one point, I became so full of, knowledge, like pregnant with knowledge, and I just felt like I had to go out and share it with the world. And that was difficult, because leaving the ashram was very difficult for me. I didn't want to leave, and I wanted to just be with him. But I kind of felt like, the world is so confused. There's so much suffering in the world. There's no need for it. How can I not go out there and try to help, So I did. Yeah.
What made you to start Someshwara?
Well,
In the context of
yeah.
you trying to help the people to get
Yeah. The world is out of balance. We have plenty of Agni, plenty of fire in the world, but not enough Soma, not enough nourishment, And so I wanted to start first a Vedic community using Sthapatya Veda. All the homes here, all the buildings are built according to Sthapatya Veda. And what that does is it creates a field that sustains life, a whole area, a whole community that's in harmony with nature. And so it only made sense to call it Mount Soma. We're building a mountain of Soma. And so then it was actually quite interesting, because I decided at one point that in the center of town we should have a Shiva Linga. And I thought nothing special, just a garage, anything. Just we put a Shiva Linga, and so we can start creating some sattva, like that. And the one thing led to the next, and before you know it, Someshwara temple. And it only makes sense that it's the mountain of Soma. It's all about Soma, so Soma worships Shiva. And why Shiva? Because Shiva is it. Shiva is the bottom line. Shiva is the no nonsense, absolute, period. Boom, So Shiva, I love Shiva, And so we started a Someshwara temple, Soma worshipping Shiva. It only makes sense,
Yeah, can you elaborate the definition of Soma?
Soma, you could say that the whole universe is built out of Agni and Soma, fire and water, food and digestion of food. You can look at it like that. Soma has, as all words really, but Soma has different meanings on different levels. And on a very deep level of the meaning of Soma, it's like nectar of the gods. It's like that finest thing that feeds life on a most fundamental, most primal, most pure level. Soma. They say that on another level, they say, yeah, it's like Amritam, yeah. Nectar of immortality, like that. And it's like when a person is enlightened, in the digestive system, they naturally produce soma. It's the final end product of digestion, the finest end product of digestion, the purest form of food, amritam, and it refines all the senses, refines all the perceptions. So the food you eat, no matter what you eat, gets broken down into soma, and then the whole physiology is nourished on the deepest level of life, like that. Soma.
So, is this the summary of what you learnt at the ashram? Or what was the summary of, what was your takeaway when you get
Yeah.
out of the...
See, real knowledge is what I gained at the ashram. We could say I learned this fact, I learned that fact, and I learned beautiful facts. But real knowledge is much deeper than facts. Real knowledge is awakening to that home of all knowledge in the depth of your being. But the depth of your being isn't about things. It's no thing. It's pure isness, pure being, pure consciousness, not conscious of anything. And that quality, that value, when you awaken to that, wells up through all levels of your life. But on that deepest level, we can call it the finest feeling level, that just most refined state where you feel into and you sense knowledge, the home of all knowledge, that source that out of which all other knowledges emerge, you see. And that's what I got from the ashram. To say I learned a fact about soma, or I learned, it's to sell the ashram far too short, It's something much greater.
I think this temple was built few years ago, and as of today, do you think your original purpose is still in progress, and is there anything you are diverted anywhere?
We've only begun, and we won't stop until there's no suffering on the planet.
So nowhere you thought you were on an off track?
No. But life is funny. It's not simple, So I like to say that we have a goal, we have a vision, but when you put a sailboat in the water, you don't set the sail one time and hold the rudder still one time and then end up at the goal. You tack. You go back and forth, side to side. So we tack all the time, every day, every moment. In this conversation already, you and I have both tacked several times. So that's just the nature of life. So yes, we tack, but we stay steady with our goal, fixed.
So you felt there is at no point in time you never felt you might have gone into a totally wrong track?
No, never, not for a second, not for even an instant. No. How can we go off track? There's all of life stays on track, goes in one direction, back to the ocean of being, back to God, back to oneness. Just some people know it, other people don't. Some people get confused and they get off on tangents, but nevertheless, the gravity pulls all the leaves off the tree back down to the earth, even though some of the leaves go like this, some of them go straight away, some of them don't know where they're going. But like that, I know the direction that all of humanity has to go. And our purpose is to help that, facilitate that, help people come back to awakening to their full grandeur, who it is they truly are, which is divine, one with God. It's natural. What's unnatural is suffering. That's the thing we have in our favor. That's what makes our job easy, so we're not swimming against the natural flow of life. We're helping things flow with it. Like that.
Humans, we are enjoying unnatural things. We are getting it easy.
Yeah.
But natural things is very difficult. Going with the flow is difficult, I think. We have
Well,
more suffering than happiness.
it's very funny because, see, what does going with the flow mean? We all think we know what it means, and we all try to force our lives to go in the direction of what we think it means, but that's not what it means. You see? Yeah. So these things, we can use these words freely, and it gives a feeling, but then as soon as the words are stated, they're misinterpreted. That's why I say when the Master speaks, it immediately ceases to be what the Master said and becomes what the listener heard. You see? Yeah. And then I say that, and therein lies the birth of religion. Religions really aren't about what the Master said, they're about what the listener thought the Master said. But it's pointing in a direction. So religion is a funny thing. On the one hand, it's based on the divine truth, the teachings of the rishis, the teachings of the seers, pure knowledge. And on the other hand, it's shrouded by what people think the rishis are trying to say.
Now we are moving to the religion.
Okay?
So what exactly is difference between major religions? Is there any difference, or they are all saying the same thing?
Well, they're all about the same thing, but I like to say religion has 2 feet. One foot is in spirituality, the other foot is in cultural integrity. You see, the laws of nature are different in different parts of the world, and cultures are different in different parts of the world, and they culture the people. They evolve the people. The value of a culture when it's living, when it's in its integrity, you know, cultures can decay and become twisted, or they can live the full, true value of what's great about that culture. And when cultures are civilized, then they evolve and culture the awareness of the people. So they help evolve the people. And it's different in different parts of the country, in the parts of the world. And so we have different religions. One foot is in the culture of that land, and the other is in spirituality. Spirituality is available to everyone. It's the same. It's like physics. Physics isn't different when you travel around the world. It's physics. But how we interface with the physics of life, in other words, the Veda, is different in different parts of the world. So the Veda, the way I use the word Veda, it's not a religious thing. It's physics. It's science. It's the underlying basis of life. And so there's one Veda, and it's common to all religions, but every religion approaches it from the angle of their own culture.
To whatever I know, major difference between some of the religions is, for example, Hindu religion believes in karma principle, life after life, but there are some other religions which don't believe in that concept.
Yeah, I don't really think that's true. I think that people don't understand their religions. You know, because I did a whole series of tapes, for example, on Christianity and what Jesus was really trying to say there. And it got confused, you know. Somebody asked me once, do I think Jesus is the only way? And I said, yeah, definitely. Jesus is the only way. Nothing else works, just Jesus. But Jesus has many names. He comes in many different forms, you see.
But do they or any other religion believes in the principles of karma and life after life?
Sure. Yeah, I understand actually even in the Bible, originally reincarnation was there, but I think it was King James that took it out, you know. But it doesn't matter, because what matters is what underlies all religions, and that's truth. That's the nature of life. That's what religions are about. And there are varying degrees, even in Hinduism. There are all kinds of different opinions. And some people, they argue back and forth, you know. Some people think Vishnu is the only way. And see, the understanding, it's very subtle. Because if you pick up the Shiva Pranas, Shiva's the only way. If you pick up the Vishnu Pranas, Vishnu's the only way. So if you don't understand how that comes together, then you get confused and you say, oh, the Hindu stuff doesn't make any sense. They say this, they say that, they don't agree. But if you understand the nature and the structure of existence, then you understand. There's a picture that shows, and you look at the picture one way, it's 2 boxes. You look at the same picture another way, you see 3 boxes. Which is it? Well, it's both. And maybe it's neither. And that's the nature of existence. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of the Veda, you see? So simplistic understandings even of the Veda create these denominations and conflicts, and it all comes from lack of understanding. Now, there is a value to people who stay solely devoted to Vishnu. It cultures the physiology a certain way. Others, Shiva, cultures the physiology a certain way. And so sometimes people will be critical because there are some people who won't go into a Shiva temple because they're strictly devoted to Vishnu, that's it. Oh, you know, that's so judgmental. No. They're culturing their physiology a certain way. There are many different, many different paths to God, many different roads home, and that are effective. Not all roads are effective. Some end up to be dead ends and you have to back up, go back. But there are many paths, and they can contradict, apparently. Paradox, contradiction, is inherent to the nature of life and existence, you see. We have to understand these things, or we get all confused. And right now, when it comes to spirituality, the world's pretty confused, you know.
Okay, that's where I wanted to go. Is there a way to define spirituality, or how
S-
do you define?
yeah, some people, they think, it's like if you had a map of all the different fields of study. Some people say, okay, over here we have biology, and over here we have sociology, and over here we have business, and over here we have spirituality. And I say, no, no, no. Spirituality is the one thing, the one field of knowledge, the vessel, if you will, that holds all these other fields of knowledge. It's an understanding of the wholeness of life. It's an understanding of how all the pieces of the puzzle come together into a unified whole. And it's an understanding of the nature of that unified whole. That's spirituality. And it has different facets, two sides of the coin. One side of the coin is science. It's pure science. But even in nature and science, everything has, I say, a personified component. In other words, the science of you're a bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons, cells, blood, bile, lymph, like that. But that's not what we think of when we think of you. When we think of you, we think of the personified aspect. And spirituality is the same way. It's a science. But when we think of, when we feel into the grandeur and the exquisite value of that underlying basis of existence, the only thing that gives it meaning is the personified correlate to that unified field, which we call, that personified correlate, we call God. And God has many faces.
Wrong definition.
No, you could say that because, we have to start with an understanding of the nature of existence. Because once we understand the nature of existence, we understand that everything in existence is gravitating back to oneness. It's just like every drop of rain that falls in the highest mountain, wherever it is, it's gravitating back to the ocean. And so that's what you say. Spirituality is about that process of going back to oneness. That's what it's about. But see, spirituality also includes the whole structure of existence. So it's not just about the gravitational process, gravitating back to oneness, but it's about the mechanics, all the different things we incur, the different fields of life, and how those fit into that big puzzle, that big picture.
So, in your view, all religions eventually says we have to get into oneness.
In their essence, for sure. The real message, the real meaning, yes. But what people do with that, who knows?
Their own interpretation.
Yeah. You see, that's the value of science, is it has to make sense. But somewhere along the line in the field of spirituality, people decided it doesn't need to make sense. Why? Because they didn't have the understanding to make sense of it. But see, that's a bad thing. But at the same time, it's a beautiful thing. I find it really beautiful that before people could really make sense of it all, they could feel that gravitation. They could feel that inside their being. To the point they were so dedicated to it that they even built huge temples in the name of it when it didn't make sense. They didn't have the science to back it up. But they knew it had to be true. That's knowing. That's inner knowing. Some people call that faith, and I say, no. We don't want faith. Get rid of faith. Find the knowing in yourself and build on that. As you work with it, you come to know more and more. Faith finds fulfillment in its own annihilation. You don't have to have faith anymore because you know. And if you really, really look at faith, you realize that what it's based upon is knowing. People know it inside themselves. Somehow they just know it's got to be true. It's a very, very, very good question. How do you know if somebody is spiritually awakened? There's no short answer to that other than you have to listen very carefully. And the reason why is because we all have what we call preconceived notions. We think that if, in America, we think that if somebody is spiritual, they're going to be like Cecil B. DeMille's depiction of Jesus in the movie Ben-Hur, where he floats in and everybody stands back, and even the mean Roman sergeant with the whip just starts to stagger back, and it's not like that. If it was like that, where would they have found people to grab him and nail him to a cross? It's more subtle. It's deeper, but people look to the surface. They think that if a person is enlightened, he never gets angry. They think if a person is enlightened, he always behaves kind of in a floaty sort of a way, and maybe he speaks a little bit differently than everybody. All these different ideas about what an enlightened person is like. And so then what do people do? They imitate that kind of behavior, and they get big followings.
I think this question is internally. How do I know myself whether I have
Oh, how do you know yourself?
Yes.
Okay, well, so the question first, what I was answering wasn't your question.
other part of the
Yeah, but the other part of the question, how do you know yourself? And that is far more elusive than you might think. How do you know if you're enlightened or not? It's far more elusive than you might think. Why? Because it's natural. Being enlightened isn't like, oh, I'm really strange. Being enlightened is just being more natural. Slowly, slowly you become more natural. But, see, as you become more and more natural, it's a little bit, I compare it to like water. And you take water and you cool it down. No real difference, still water, you still drink it, it's all the same. Cool it down, no difference, no difference, no difference. But slowly, slowly it gets to a point where at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it freezes. It's a phase transition. Boom. Completely different. And enlightenment is like that. So there's a moment when it happens, all of a sudden everything's completely different. You thought you knew what karma was and you realized you had no idea. You thought you knew everything. You thought you understood things. Everything is turned upside down. Everything becomes different. But that also has to do with your angle of entry. It is possible that you go in so gradually and so slowly that you don't even notice. That's unlikely. The other extreme is like, for example, Ramana Maharshi. He went in very abruptly, and he couldn't even talk or eat for 2 years. People had to take care of him, force feed him. If worms were boring holes through his legs, he wouldn't care. They had to, So it depends on your angle of entry, really. And there's no one response to that question then. It's very dependent on the individual. It depends, again, on your angle of entry. Sometimes they think, there are people that think that if you're enlightened, you're not going to eat, you're just going to wander off in the jungle, you're going to have no affinity for relative life, and so people have to beat them with sticks to keep them in their body and all like that. Maybe they have enlightenment, but it's not an integrated state. There's a more evolved level of enlightenment where you function in the world on that level of life, and you're also fully enlightened, you're awakened to the depth of your being, but they function in harmony with one another. It's just like a reed in the wind. It blows and it goes, but nevertheless it's rooted in the earth. You see? It doesn't mean that you have to cut the reed off at the soil to be enlightened. You can live both values of life 100%. And that's called an integrated state. That's a more evolved state. Yeah. Again, that's an unintegrated state, and it doesn't have to be. But now where that comes from, because someone might say, oh, no, that's in the Veda. We have that in the Veda. Well, yeah. What that means is that there's a level of your life very deep within your being that you're awake to, where you are one with everything.